Welcome to our 5-minute Bible study in the book of Genesis. Today we are in Genesis chapter 11, the very familiar story of the Tower of Babel. Now, after the account of Noah and the flood, we recall that after the waters receded, Noah and his family came out. And in chapter 10, we are given the account of the repopulation of the world as the family begins to spread and nations grow. And so chapter 10 is sort of a summary chapter of the world repopulating. So we can assume a number of years pass, quite a few years in this chapter as the world again becomes populated. It's sort of the recreation story, as we mentioned yesterday. And then when we get to chapter 11, we have this very familiar story of the Tower of Babel. Let's look at it. Now, the whole world had one language, common speech. The people moved eastward. They found the plain of Shinar and they settled there. And they said to each other, "Come, let us make bricks and let us bake them thoroughly." They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. And they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth." But the Lord came down to see the city and this tower the people were building. And the Lord said, "If as one people speaking one language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand one another." So the Lord scattered them over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it was called Babel, because the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there, the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. As I said, we're very familiar with this story of Babel and the tower. But what exactly does it mean for us? What is it teaching us? Now, we know that God had commanded Noah and his sons, and as they repopulated the world, they were to move over the earth. They were to form communities and people groups and nations. They were not to stay in one place. So there's a disobedience going on here in Babel. One thing we see, they were determined to stay together, not spread over the whole earth as God had commanded. And so to accomplish that disobedience, which is it not a repetition of the sin of the Garden of Eden? When Adam and Eve said, "What God has told us to do, we will not do." God said, "Don't eat the fruit. We're going to do it anyway." The fruit of the knowledge of tree and evil. God had now told these people to spread over the world. They said, "We're not going to do it. We're going to stay together." So we find that disobedience, that sin. What is it about building the tower that's intriguing? What does this tower mean? Now we know that in ancient times, in the culture of this day, often people built what was called ziggurats. We see this in the religions of Mesopotamia. They often built ziggurats. This is what this is. This tower is a ziggurat. Now, a ziggurat would normally be constructed next to the people's temple. And it was not a tower built that they might go up to God. They built the tower that their gods might come down to them. Do you understand? But what is going on here? These people are building a ziggurat, asking, quote, the gods to come down to them. Well, is that a bad thing? Well, notice why they wanted, quote, the gods to come to them. They said, "Let's build this tower that reaches up to heaven, that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we'll be scattered over the face of the whole earth." But the key is that we might make a name for ourselves. They built this ziggurat, this tower, inviting whoever the gods were, because they were already starting to forget the Lord, hoping that the gods would come to them and make a name for them. Now in the Bible, when you come to worship God and become His community, the idea is to exalt His name, not our name. We are to make a name for God. That is, we are to exalt the name of God. But now they're asking the gods to come and exalt their name, to make a name for themselves. You see, once again, how this is the original sin. In the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve were tempted. If you'll take of this fruit, you will become like God. You'll make a name for yourself. You'll become God. And so we see it again in Babel. We'll build a ziggurat asking, quote, whoever the gods are to come down among us so that they might make a name for us. But when the Lord comes and sees, he says, no, I will not allow this. I'm going to scatter the people and force them away from each other into different groups and nations and communities speaking different languages because they thought they could exalt themselves above me. But once again, we see sin rearing its ugly head. And so God confuses the language. He creates Babel among them, forcing the people to flee from each other and to form communities and to form nations. So again, in the Tower of Babel, we see sin rearing its ugly head, the desire to make a name for ourselves rather than exalt the name of God, the desire to worship ourselves rather than worship God alone, eating the fruit again. So God scatters the people. Nations grow. Now things are ready for the call of one man to start the family of God, that is the man Abraham. And so our next time together, we'll begin looking at the story of Abraham, the great man of faith. That's next time. Today, I hope you have a great day. I hope you live for the name of God, to exalt his name. That is what we're called to do. Have a blessed day, and I'll see you next time for our 5-minute Bible study in the book of Genesis.